Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk. I am your host, Officer Antoine Thomas. Yep, that's me. Look, I want to dive right in. I want to take too much time. I want to talk about what we have been already discussing. Crime is out of control. What are you going to do about it? And before I forget, please like, share, subscribe, do all those things. And thank you to all the many listeners out there. And I want to just say, Zachary Mashburn, get ready. We're bringing you back on. I think we can start up this live interviewing again. But I have a special guest that's on the show with me today. As you can see, he is in person. His name is Carlos Perry. He is a former Baltimore, Maryland police officer. So as you know, again, we're talking about crime is out of control. What are we going to do about it? So I want to hear from a professional man who is a conservative, who are doing big things right here in my hometown where I'm at today, Raleigh, North Carolina. In North Carolina, he's actually traveling, but we were able to get him on the show. So I'm excited. And without further ado, Carlos, Brother Perry, how are you, my friend? Take it away.
Brother Antoine, how you feeling? Thanks for having me on your show. I'm doing well. Life is good. And I am motivated and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's always a beautiful thing. It's always a beautiful thing. We can come together as one. Look, I want to discuss some things with you as it pertains to crime. You were born in a city and a state that is actually reeked with crime, unfortunately, and it seems like our politicians haven't been able to grasp that area of Baltimore. But I want to hear from you and want to speak on some things as it pertains to crimes out of control. And in your opinion, what are we going to do about it, brother? Tell us about your Baltimore career.
Yes. So early when I was a younger man, I don't want to say a young man. I still think I'm young. But when I was a younger man, I was a Baltimore City police officer for 2 years before I joined the United States Marine Corps. I did 8 years in the United States Marine Corps, 2 combat tours, Iraq and Afghanistan, led Marines in combat. Something I'm proud. I will always be proud of. Father of 3. Something else I'm proud of. And I have an interesting perspective because I've been on both sides. And as I always tell people, liberals mainly, I've been where you are. You've never been where I am. You know what I mean? And so one thing that I do is I always encourage people to place your support and place your vote into where you see yourself in the future and not just where you see yourself right now. Okay. So when it comes to crime being out of control, it is just that. It's out of control. It's out of control all over America. And we see it every single day. You can turn on the news, turn on social media, and you can see the crime out of control, whether it's people mugging people or going inside department stores and stealing things, or whether it's the typical crime that's in these big cities, liberal cities, mainly for a long time. You can see them out and about, the drugs, the homicides, the violence. It's out of control, brother. And I don't want to just sit here and say that it's out of control, but we're here to have a discussion on the solutions and what to do about it. And one thing that I do believe that we need to do about the crime is we need to find the money to hire more police officers. I am pro police. I am pro law enforcement. I am pro order. Okay. Another thing that I do believe is it starts in the home, because not only are we out of control, adults out of control, but our children are out of control because they have no guidance. The adults are not leading them properly. And as we know, we can't teach our children anything that we don't know ourselves. So it starts with the parenting. We got to go back to having outreach programs, not just for children, but for children and adults as well.
Very well said, man. We can end the show right here. You said it so profoundly, as I always state. When you look at Baltimore, from your experience growing up there, where do you think that city as leaders, will even include the leaders of the police department and, of course, the town council men and women and the even the council men and women, if y'all have such a thing like that, where have they gone wrong? Where was the disconnect? Are they still having a disconnect there in Baltimore as it pertains to crime and, of course, policing and community.
Yeah, the disconnect is in the fact that politicians, they kind of understand the system. That once they decide they're going to be politicians and run for city council or run for mayor, they understand the system. And one thing about the system is they know how to manipulate the people, right? And so, as we should be voting conservative, you know, as liberal policies have not worked historically in these major cities, these politicians, they know how to manipulate the people through the people that they hire to push their agenda and to campaign for them, because they know that if they can continue to manipulate the minds of the people, they'll continue to vote the same way. Nothing will continue to get done, and the people will continue to vote on hope. And as we know, anything that we hope for hasn't happened yet. And money. I'm sorry to cut you off. I do
No,
apologize,
go ahead.
brother.
Go ahead, man. You're right at it.
The
I thought you had took a pause. Go right ahead.
So the money is a major factor. So you have these politicians and you have these officials within the police department, and they have really good ideas, and they're very benevolent. They're into the church, you know what I mean? And ironically, they're raised conservative, right? But then when they
Mhm.
get in the upper echelon of government, they turn very liberal in their thinking, because it becomes about more about the money and more about their power than it does about the people.
That's very profound again, and we see that in our Black culture. That, of course, we are driven by our faith, and unfortunately, our faith values and beliefs does not line up with our party affiliations, because we are still giving the left a lot of praise when they are the ones who, again, we're not going to blame everything on them, but the majority are destroying this country based on the racial divide, and telling our Black kids that police officers, being that they're white police officers, and I talked about this in many episodes of this show, that policing is predominantly dominated by white men. And so, of course, when you have more of a population and someone of the opposite is trying to tell you that these group of people are what systemically racist, whatever it may be, they're violent, they're dictators, you're going to start believing that, because you're going to see that they, in the policing world, they patrol more because there's more of them. So, of course, there's more white brothers in policing, but we definitely don't want to sit and say that they are all racist. Obviously, we don't know anybody's really intention or their heart, but we can honestly say, you're in the profession, I'm still in it, that the average cop that we know, white males, they're not racist at all, and do the right thing. But when you're telling someone this and you see it, they start to believe it, and that's why our young minds are affected. And so I wish that we could change that trajectory. But back to the pastoring, I said this the other day, as Black people, we pride ourselves on respecting our pastors. A lot of Black males look up to their pastor, and I'm sure it's the same in the white culture, but I'm talking about Black culture. We look up to our pastors, and we pretty much believe everything that they're saying. And so we see that a lot of Black churches who are on the left are spouting this hatred and telling them about the Republicans or races, and of course the policing needs to be changed, Black Lives Matter, all this stuff. And these people, parishioners, are believing it because they take their pastor's word, as we like to say, as the gospel.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying there, Perry? And I think if we can use our pastors in a good way, because we can go all the way back to Margaret Sanger. She stated, how could I get the Black community to buy into Planned Parenthood and the extermination of our Black race? She said, I know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to incorporate the Black leaders, the Black pastors, because we know that every Black person who's in the church look up, again, to their pastors. So they use them as the political puns, and it worked. And we saw that during COVID as well. They said, let's reach out, the government said, let's reach out to our Black pastors, because you remember the time when they were saying that our race is definitely affected by the COVID due to our makeup, our body structure, our blood types, whatever they wanted to say. And they infiltrated the Black churches, and we saw a lot of pastors opening up their churches to be used for the shot, the jab, I call it. So that is still going on. That's still going
Yes,
on. I digress. Go ahead, brother.
it is. So what happens, what we have to understand is that we're not blaming everything on liberals, but they have to take a large chunk of the responsibility or culpability in the destruction of America. And one thing that I've noticed in living is that Democrats, they rule by fear, right? And so COVID was a fear campaign as well. You know, they ran on fear. They got people fearing. People fear death. People fear the unknown. Death is the unknown, right? No
Mhm.
matter what we believe in, we don't know how it looks, exactly how it looks on the other side, right? That's the reason. That's where faith comes in, right?
Amen.
But one thing that they do is that they rule on fear. And how they rule on fear is through icks, isms, and phobias, right?
Mm.
And as long as they can call something, put an ick, ism, or a phobia on it, okay, then they can start to manipulate the minds of the people, okay? And I'm gonna go back to something that you said earlier. Um, Policing, it although it may be dominated by white men, see the old me would say, oh, it needs to be more black officers, right? It
Yeah.
needs to be more black officers. But here's the deal, right? We need to stop in the black community. We need to stop focusing on a certain industry being dominated by white men and focus on it being dominated by the right men, okay? Because we focus too much on black versus right rather than wrong versus right, okay? And that is something that I preach. This is from my platform. This is something that when I'm coaching people, this is something that I always tell them when they start talking about the black versus white. I listen to them, but I also give them the other side because we're so focused on skin color and race as opposed to focusing on our nationality as Americans. Okay. We are Americans. No matter, we had no choice in what we look like. We had no choice in it, right? But we have a choice whether we want to be American or not. Okay. And it's funny how we always giving praise to other countries, whether it's living in other places, but we still make our money here so we can be somebody over there. We're still in the best country in the world, and I stand on that. But as far as policing goes, and as far as crime goes, we need to strengthen sentences. Needs to be a total reform in the justice system in general, right? I worked briefly in the Department of Corrections, right, when I was a police officer, and one thing that I would tell you, it's corrupt on the inside, in the jails. People go to prison now to become better criminals, right? It's it's not so much the Department of Corrections anymore. It's the Department of Projection, okay? Because you got other criminals projecting onto other criminals and taking would-be corrected citizens and just turning them into better criminals rather than reformed citizens and productive citizens. Okay, so you can get guns, drugs, and get phones. They're taking pictures in jail now. People go to jail. People don't have no fear of jail. They have no fear. We need to go I'm willing to go as conservative as we need to go to curb the crime because people need to fear going to prison. People need to fear what's going to happen to them if they commit crimes. It's no fear anymore. That's why it needs to be a total reform.
Well said. I said the other day on this show that we have to get back to the everyday average talk that we used to talk about. And you remember, you kind of know what I'm about to say. If you do the crime, you have to do the time. See, the time is not adding up with that crime. And I know it's a very simple saying and solution, but it appears, Brother Carlos, that we haven't been able to do it. And it goes back to our DAs. You look at New York, Alvin Bragg, he's letting people out of jail for crimes that are heinous and they deserve longer periods of a sentence. But yet we're trying to focus on a man who was a former president. They're trying to get him on white collar crimes when at the end of the day, President Trump hasn't killed anybody. He hasn't assaulted anybody. He hasn't taken anyone's freedom, lives. But yet we're focusing on that. That is not what the DA's job is. It's to prosecute those who have committed crimes against persons or businesses, wherever it may be. But we focus a lot in the criminal justice system on actual physical crimes, assaults, murders, sexual assaults, rapes, things like that. But you are 100% correct. And until we can get back to the rehabilitation of someone who has committed crimes and you put them into, you put them back out into society without any rehabilitation, most of the time we've all had conversations where you heard people say, I just feel like, these criminals enjoy being in prison or jail because they have all these free freedoms, and they are free because we're paying for them as citizens, and they have nothing to do other than work out and play video games. And I'm like you, I had an opportunity as a former Wake County Sheriff's deputy to work in our jail system part-time and, make extra money and build up that retirement. And let me tell you what, I got along well with these guys because you know better than I know, it's a thinking game, and it's how you treat them. They'll treat you most times with good outcomes. But what I did notice, Carlos, is for 12 hours in that jail, these guys have nothing better to do than to watch my maneuvers, my moves. How do I, move around? And, they're trying to scheme and come up with ways to find out how could I manipulate this particular deputy. And they have 12 hours to do that, and many of them have the years and years of a sentence. So those minds that are being used, they can be used for a sharper reason, being that when they get out of jail or prison, they can be better, productive citizens. Of course, I know people going to say, hey, well, they do have transition programs. We have outreach programs. We have tools of the trade programs where they can get their GED and get a certificate of maybe in plumbing, whatever these things may be. We get all that. But it appears to us, and we're seeing across the nation, that they're not using their skills that they have been given for free once they're released to be a productive citizen. Most of going back out doing what we call repeat crimes. And you know better than I know that, Carlos. I spoke about in an episode that's going to be aired before this one here. I talked about a gentleman in New York, Mr. Bergen. Okay, he was assaulted by 5 black males in New York just for being a Jew. And they beat him pretty good. And one of the guys who took the brunt of the sentence, when they got ready to hear his remarks in court, this man said, yes, I did assault him. Here goes the kicker, Carlos. He said these words, and then you can look him up. He said, and I would do it again. So that tells you right there, he hasn't really been rehabilitated. He has no remorse. And guess what? He's definitely had the mindset of, when you get me out of here, I'm going to do it again. It may not be to that person or to a Jew, but I'm going to commit more crimes. He said it right there.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I've seen it in Baltimore City. I have family members the same way, that are career criminals. And I do believe that part of me believes that it's a mental disorder, right? It's a mental disorder that they cannot get right, quote unquote, get right.
Right.
But I was a United States Marine. I was also raised by spare the rod, spoil the child as well. And I do believe that we should spare the rod. We should not spare the rod in society. I believe that people like him need to be made an example of.
Amen.
Okay. I think that there is also a problem with our system of checks and balances. Who's looking over the DA? Who's watching over the DAs? Who's looking over these judges? They don't have any consequences because they have complete autonomy to rule how they want to rule, and they're appointed by certain politicians that are corrupt as well. There's no checks and balances. There's nobody looking after anyone. Okay. And it's like America has become a free for all. And quite frankly, I'm tired of it. I know that you're tired of it. And I know that police officers around the country are tired of it. We have this thing called, well, it used to be called defund the police that tried to gain momentum. And a lot of people are now backing off of that because they're realizing that now crime is out of control, and the same police officers that you want to defund, you want to defend you when a crime happens or when you call them. Okay. And so that I just want to tell everyone, I'm no longer a police officer. Okay. I'm no longer law enforcement, but I want to tell you guys that the average police officer 99% of the police officers just want to get home safely. Okay. They're not
Mhm.
thinking about pulling you out of your car, shooting you because you're black, racially profiling you. The average police officer is not thinking about that. They're thinking about their family. The average police officer has family. They want to get home at the end of their shift. That's what they're concerned with. They make a living like you make a living. They have a job like you have a job. The same way you want to leave, whether it's Target or Walmart or whatever the case, you know what I mean? Shout out Target and Walmart workers. Um, that's the same way these law enforcement officials want to get home to their families as well.
Well said. Well said. And listen, I've talked about it on so many episodes, whether I'm doing a podcast or in person or on other podcast shows or my own talk about this. We're just trying to make it, like you just stated, Carlos, to the next second, to the next minute, and ultimately to go home after our 12-hour shift and to do it again the next day. We're not out profiling. We're not out there trying to beat up on black people, white people, Hispanics, whatever it may be. That is just the talking point that will always resonate with people who are, at the end of the day, let's face it, criminals. That's their way out of being a criminal, to say the police are targeting them. Police don't target anything. We only target when we're practicing to shoot for our annual qualification. We're putting our gun and pointing it towards a target. That's the only time we're targeting anything. And of course, if it's a real life shooting situation, but those are all myths. But look, I have enjoyed this conversation. I want to wrap up here and let me just tell you this. This won't be the last time Brother Carlos is going to be on. I know this show is going to be awesome. I know I'm going to get great reviews and people saying, bring them back on, Carlos. You're going to be welcome anytime. But we're going to be doing some more great talking. But as we get ready to end shortly, I want to ask you, because you spoke about it on the opening of this show. You said there's a solution. We're not only going to talk about the things that are going wrong. We're going to have a solution. And I appreciate you for saying that. In your humble opinion, as a former police officer and as a great upstanding citizen, as a black male, strong black male, a personal trainer, all these great things, conservative. What do you think? What message can you give to your own former city and state to help them get back on track to reduce this crime that they have in Baltimore, Maryland?
I will say to the people in Baltimore, Maryland, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and all around the country, what I'll tell them is that we need to vote what's right and not what's left over. And one thing that we need to do is that we need to vote according to where we see each other, where we see our future, and not where we are right now, because we need a vision for our future. Because if we have a vision for our future, we have a vision for our children, and our children are our future. As they told us when we were young, the children are our future. Now we're here, we're the future. Our children are our future. They'll be taking care of us. So that's what we need to do. We need a vision for our future, and we need to vote for what's right and not for what's left over.
Man, that's profound. I like that. You know, I got a saying said, "Vote right so you don't get left behind." But I love that
I like that.
that slogan. That is yours. We're going to let you. We're not going to let anybody steal that. If I hear it, I'm going to say, "Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. You heard that on the Real Talk? That was by Carlos Perry." Man,
Yes,
that is
indeed.
great. And hey, at the end of the day, people say the right and the left. Okay, those are the biggest two parties we know, obviously, that make up our political system. And those are the two parties that fight the most. We get that. But people, like you stated, Carlos, have got to vote their convictions. They have to vote right. And you don't want any leftovers. If you want America to be saved, and like you stated again, Carlos, if you want a future for your children, my future children someday that I'll have, I want them to live in a society in America where everybody's one and we serve one God, and we're all equal and we're all upstanding citizens. So I would say this on the outro to this show. My solution to Baltimore and all the other cities and states you named, and there's so many that are ramped with crime, and we know that the biggest cities in America is ranked with crime, or reeked with crime. Of course, we know New York is. It's not that we're not getting good quality officers in there. We're not getting good quality leaders to help make these decisions as it pertains to our council men and women. We've got to continue to provide the funding. You know, we have a problem right here in Raleigh. It's not that the police chief, Stella Patterson, is not doing a good job. You know, she was dealt some terrible cards, but she's trying to keep things together, trying to make sure her officers are policing right. But now they have a shortage of cops because they're looking to bring in, you know about this, Carlos, unarmed security guards to secure area of near downtown Raleigh, where we call it the bar district, where you would think more police are needed because people are drinking. They've had a murder there recently. Unfortunate thing happened, but it's not that Stella's not doing a good job, Chief Stella. It's that she's not getting the backing by the council. And I'm sorry, we love the I can't even say the word revitalization of our cities, and we want to see those historic areas rebuilt and the black areas rebuilt. But we also have to make sure that we're not taking funding away from our law enforcement and first responders. But I'm going to stick on the law enforcement because that's where the issue lies. We got to get better. We got to get more money in there. And I always hear, you know, about our training, and I always talk about, and I debunk that. We get great training. We get a lot of training. Matter of fact, sometimes we complain. You know that, Carlos, about too much training. I know the saying is you can never have too much training. But if we get back to putting the money where it should be, we get back to, as citizens, voting the right people into our council, our county commissioners, our state reps, our Congress and U.S. Senate, we can then hone down on crime and get people on crime and get people to stop thinking that it's a black or white or left or right thing. We just want to do the right thing. And I think if we do all that and stay abreast of what's going on, we can make society better and crime can be reduced. But I do want to say that as citizens, we also have to do our part. We can't blame everything on the police, can't blame everything on our city and our state government. We have got to put the blame at our feet as well. We got to fix some things we're doing wrong.
If to the citizens and just very briefly to everyone listening, I just want to say if you see something, say something. Gone are the days of stop snitching, no snitching. This person's a snitch, right? I'm a proud snitch. If I see something, I'm gonna say something because I care about my community. Okay, and if the people listening, if it's not about voting, okay, let's go back to what that never mind where Big Mama voted. Okay, let's go to how Big Mama raised her family. Although she may have voted liberal, Big Mama raised her family conservative. Okay, and we need to go back to those values. So voting the right people in is just taking the handcuffs off the police officers who are trying to police our community and enforce the law. Consequences and repercussions for criminals. Consequences and repercussions for criminals is a very viable solution. How we get there, that's the journey.
Love it. Consequences and repercussions.
That's right.
If you do the crime, you must do the time. Those are our two phrases of the day, Carlos and I. We want to say I have enjoyed this show, Carlos. You have brought great insight. You have basically dropped the mic in less than 30 minutes, and I've enjoyed every bit of it. Let's do it again. Thank you for your time. Thank you for finally making this happen. And I knew it was going to be great conversations, and our technical issues have dwindled down and everything's smoothed out the way you said that they would, Carlos. And I'm looking forward to getting this show out. So as we end, I always say this: reach one, teach one. And until we have an opportunity to come together again, I want to say, God, continue to bless these great United States. Bless our men who are fighting in our armed forces, the ones who are centered and gathered on the outskirts of Israel. We pray for Israel, as I stated in multiple shows since the war. Really won't even call it a war, since this great genocide has taken place by the Hamas people. I'll say that God continue to bless Israel and allow our leader, our President Biden, to make great decisions and allow people that are with him to give him great information to make great decisions. And until we do it again, like, share, subscribe. And of course, God, please continue to bless our men and women serving in blue. I'm your host, Officer Antoine Thomas, and you have been listening to Real Talk. Until next time, thank you, Brother Carlos. I enjoyed it.